In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, I'd like to welcome you all here to the Islamic Center, Community Center of Potomac. I begin with the greetings of peace and also a prayer for peace for you, for your friends, and for all of humanity. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum. On behalf of ICCP, I really want to give you a warm welcome. As you can see, we're very informal, so you can feel that you're among friends and family. We pride ourselves in being a very open, inclusive, and compassionate congregation, and we try to embody those values to the best of our ability. Now, I began with the prayer for peace, but today there are millions of people that are living in fear of imminent harm and really in imminent death. And out of them, 2 million are located in Gaza. It's reported in Islamic sources that Jesus said, by the way, I did a little bit of research. I couldn't find it in any Christian text, but if there's something I'm missing, this is a good research group, right? If there are any pastors here that can let me know. But in the Islamic text, we learned that Jesus said that rather than just killing, don't even hate in your heart at all. And rather than just not stealing, don't even desire that which is not yours. I found a lot in the Bible that has a similar message, of course. We don't lose our humanity when we kill or steal or hurt others. We lose it a lot sooner than that. We lose our humanity when the thought of that occurring to others doesn't bother us. When we're okay with living in a world that's like that. Over the last 76 years, occupation forces have not only colonized the lands of Palestine that have historically been inhabited by Jews, by Christians, and by Muslims, by and large peacefully. They've also colonized our minds and our hearts. They have convinced the world that Black and brown and Palestinian lives don't matter and can be dismissed by the simple words that we have heard 1,000 times that, well, they have the right to defend themselves. That vitriol to wipe out Gaza out of existence is what caused the captive Noa Argamani to be injured by an airstrike by her own country that seemingly has no interest in securing the release of her and the other hostages. Of course, we're all praying that all of the hostages and all of the prisoners are all released from both sides. Today, more than ever, we need people that embody prophetic values, those of Abraham, those of Moses, of Jesus, and of the seal of the messengers, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need peacemakers. God says in the Quran, وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسِّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. If others are inclined towards peace, make peace with them and put your trust in the one God. Indeed, He alone is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. If people like us, people of faith, don't restore sanity to the world, who else is going to do it? Who else can we look to? Today, by standing with the people of Gaza, you are affirming their humanity, their beauty, that they're not motivated by hate or retribution or vengeance. They simply want to live. I mean, who would want to kill Ruh al-Ruh? Many of us, we saw the beautiful image of a grandfather holding his daughter, the soul of souls, just one of thousands of images that are pierced in our minds. Only a group that is consumed by hate and rancor, that create torture camps for more than 10,000 illegal prisoners, creating a new wave of terrorism and a new wave of hatred and a new cycle of violence. Those who tell Washington, please don't send us any more smart bombs because our intention is to level Gaza. Now, of course, we don't believe that this is the desire of the regular Israeli. I do believe that most people within that society want peace, and they want to be able to live in safety and security. And our dream is that Palestinians should be able to do the same. The people of Palestine want peace desperately. Unlike many of us who are asking, God, how do you allow 20,000 children to die? They're saying we're patient with God's will and decree. They're saying He's our protector. Don't grieve for angelic children, for people of paradise. Maulana Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, nowadays the number one poet in the United States of America, believe it or not, right? But for us, it's not just poetry that you read when you're going through a bad breakup. It's deeply spiritual. That's what it's become, right? It's deeply spiritual. And he was a person that had memorized the Quran and was, to some extent, a deep scholar of religion, and indeed a scholar of the heart. He said that patience is not sitting and waiting. It is foreseeing. It is looking at the thorn and seeing in it the rose, looking at the night and finding the day. Lovers are patient and know that the moon needs time to become full. For many Palestinians, faith and hope are two sides of the same coin. So we don't have the right to lose hope either. For them, freedom and peace is about love, not about hatred. And that's why we unequivocally condemn recent instances of anti-Semitism in Montgomery County. ICCP and myself are signatories in the joint statement that was issued by the Jewish congregation in Bethesda, because we're extremely concerned about what's taking place in our schools. Our love and concern for the lives in Gaza should never ever cause us to hold any hatred in our hearts towards any of our fellow brothers and sisters in humanity. And hatred has no place in any public discourse. And so, my brothers and sisters in faith and humanity, let us do something even if we don't know if it's enough. Sometimes these events, they feel like kumbaya moments, right? We sit with other people who are peace-loving, they're just like us, and then we go home and it seems entitled to have that feel-good moment. But I want to encourage you to enjoy that and don't feel guilty about it. Because if there was more of this, there would be more love in the world and there'd be a lot less conflict. There'd be a lot less hatred. As Mark Twain said, you are never wrong for doing the right thing. And so I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of our community for just being here, for incrementally moving the needle towards peace and a world in which people in Gaza can live and exist within a free Palestine. So thank you very much. We have an amazing slate of speakers that we are so excited to hear from. Before I call our next speaker, I want to also acknowledge my dear friend and a dear friend to ICCP, Abi Janamanchi, who representing Cedar Lane he's the one that put together the program and reached out to all of the speakers. And this is such a deep friendship that we have, and I'm so in awe of his dedication and love for humanity, regardless of what's happening in the world, where it is, he jumps to action. And so Palestine is just one example, and that's reflective of all of Cedar Lane. I know we have many guests from the Cedar Lane congregation, and I'm always just amazed at what a strong and beautiful community you have. So thank you very much. Reflective of that as well is our first speaker, Reverend Ann Dursey from St. John's Norwood Episcopal Church, and we're so happy and pleased to have her here with us today. Without further ado, Ann.
Well, thank you so much, Imam Rifai. I'm delighted to be here, and I want to second what he said about thanking all of you for taking the time to be here today and to move the needle on this very difficult and painful issue. I don't know what it is like for you, but for me, sometimes when I try to grapple with the tragedy of the conflict in Israel and Palestine over history and in what is happening today in Gaza, And when we consider that conflict's deep and tangled roots, the many competing narratives that underlie it, the passions and the tragic violence that it ignites, sometimes it is just bewildering. And the sheer complexity of that situation can make us despair and almost lose hope that we can ever find a path to peace. But we are people of faith. And people of faith, whatever we choose to call our God, however we name our God, can see this situation differently. We can see it through an entirely different lens. We can see it with simplicity and with great clarity when we look at it with the eyes of God. The teachings of all our great religions tell us what is right and what is wrong. Not as we see it in the eyes of humans, consumed with issues of power, but as seen in the eyes of God, the universal spirit of peace and light and justice and love, whose intention for this world is abundant thriving for everyone. And all our great religions also teach us that the vision that God calls on us as people of faith to pursue is justice, peace, and dignity for every human being. And that means we must relinquish the hate and the violence that persists in too many human hearts in our human world. It's a vision that demands that we be repairers, not perpetrators of the breach, and that we be restorers, not destroyers of the streets. And all our great religions show all of us the path that we must follow to achieve God's vision for the world. And what is that? Well, first, we must have the moral courage to stand up and name what is wrong, no matter what the cost. Second, we must have the wisdom to hold up constantly the vision of what is right in the eyes of God. And finally, as people of faith, we must strive every day to achieve that vision, never flagging in the face of obstacles the world puts in our way. So today, with you as a person of faith, I want to take that path. And the first step is to name what is wrong in this war in Gaza, as seen with the eyes of God. The brutal violence we're seeing is wrong. Violence to resolve differences is wrong, no matter the justification. Violence as response to attack or injustice may deceive us for a time to think this is how we prevail in the world. But you know and I know that any victory or peace that's achieved by violence without justice is without substance, is built on sand, and in the end will fail. And the cycle of injustice and violence begins again. Revenge is wrong. Every death exacted in revenge for a wrong done simply lays the seeds of more violence, death, and destruction. As you said, valuing the lives of some over the lives of others is wrong in the eyes of God. Attacking innocent and defenseless people, destroying families, killing women, children, the elderly, the disabled is wrong, no matter the justification. We mourn every death and we weep for all those wounded and hurt. Denying food, water, medical assistance, shelter, and safety is wrong. Crushing people into smaller and smaller safe zones and then shooting and bombing them, no matter the justification, is wrong. Allowing the spread of disease as a tool of war or revenge is wrong. And finally, and in some ways, extremely importantly, failing to address in a peaceful and inclusive manner the fundamental issues of justice and dignity that underlie this violence in this tragic conflict is wrong. So we know what is wrong, and we must proclaim it. And we know what is right, and we must demand it. We need a ceasefire on all sides now. As people of faith, we must demand it. We need floods of humanitarian aid and assistance in Gaza right now. And as people of faith, we must demand it. We need all hostages and prisoners unjustly detained released now. We must demand it. And we need an end to the provision of military assistance used to kill innocent people and employed in violation of US and international humanitarian law. And finally, we need to begin that peaceful and inclusive process to secure for all the peoples of the region, the justice, security, dignity, and self-determination that is the foundation of a true and enduring peace. All people of faith, however we name our God, must join together, stand up, and speak out now with love in our hearts, always with a view to reconciliation and repairing the breach, for what we know is right in the eyes of God, until it becomes a reality. So to encourage us, I close with a call to prayer from the Right Reverend Stephen Charleston, an Episcopal bishop, a citizen of the Choctaw Nation, and a Native American elder, who said, "Praying for peace in times of war can feel like facing a dragon with a paper sword. But we know that is only an illusion. War is not all-powerful, inevitable, or unstoppable. Its origins are in the same place as peace, in the human heart. When we pray for peace, we are praying to reach the hearts of other human beings on all sides of the conflict, to restore a sense of compassion and hope. We seek to pour the water of life onto the flames of hate, one person at a time, until the rage subsides. So please, keep praying with me for peace, no matter how tempted you may be to despair. Confront the dragon with your love as you work in every way you can every day for the cause of peace. Amen, and thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call Rabbi Yosef Berman from New Synagogue Project and Rabbis for Ceasefire. Now, it doesn't say this here, but I think Jewish Voices, or we can keep going, but he does a lot of things. And we're so happy to have Rabbi Yosef. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for having me here. Writing about interfaith relations in 1966, the teacher of my teacher, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, asked the question, what unites us, people of different faiths? And he wrote, our being accountable to God, our being objects of God's concern, precious in God's eyes, a commitment to justice and mercy, sensitivity to the sanctity of life, and the conviction that without the holy, the good will be defeated. In the beginning of the Torah, our holy Torah, there are three fundamental questions of faith which contain the central issues of human existence. The first is in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, when Adam Harishon and Chava disobey God, and so God comes to the garden and says, Ayeka, where are you? So this is the first question in the Torah and a central question of faith, where are you? And then Adam and Chava, they have two children, Cain v'Chavel, Cain and Abel, and Cain is jealous of Abel and he kills him. Brother killing brother. Vayomer Adonai el Cain, Ehab el achicha, vayomer lo yadati, hashomer achi anochi. The divine said to Cain, where is your sibling Abel? And Cain said, I do not know. Am I my sibling's keeper? So fundamental question of faith number two, where is your sibling? fundamental question of faith number 3, am I my sibling's keeper? So let's start with these last two. Where is your sibling? First, look around. No, really, like look around right now. We're all siblings, not cousins. We share the same parent. We are all siblings. Where is your sibling? My sibling is being held hostage in a tunnel underneath Gaza. My sibling is seeking shelter in a school in Khan Yunis. My sibling is being tortured in an Israeli prison. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? Right, I often tell my students when we're learning together, there are no wrong answers. In this case, there is a wrong answer. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes. We are one another's keepers to both care for and hold one another accountable when we do wrong. Am I my brother's keeper? Morally speaking, said Heschel, there is no limit to the concern that one must feel for the suffering of human beings. There is no limit to the concern that one must feel to the suffering of human beings. I can hold within myself, and this is what I ask of my synagogue, of my congregation, a congregation for ceasefire, synagogue for ceasefire. I ask them to do the same, to hold the suffering of my people alongside the suffering of my Palestinian siblings, and also alongside the knowledge that the state of Israel's occupation and inequality and ethnic cleansing and now genocidal violence in Gaza, funded by our tax dollars, is immoral, unjust, and has to end now. The last question, God asks Ayeka, where are you? To this question, too, there can be only one response. If God asks you, where are you? Abraham's answer in the Torah, our answer is Hineni, here I am. Standing before God, accountable to God, standing with this holy congregation that is assembled, where every one of us are objects of God concern, precious in God's eyes, and today we cry out in our shared commitment to justice and to mercy. We cry out for the realization that all life is sacred. We cry out for that to be realized in our world. After Cain asks God this question, after Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? God's response is, Vayomer me asita, kol demei achicha tzoakim elai min ha'adama. What have you done? Your sibling's blood cries out to me from the ground. In Gaza, our sibling's blood is crying out from the ground. Let us respond together, here I am, with the knowledge that we are one another's siblings, and together we demand an end to the bloodshed.
Thank you for your witnessing. Next, we'd like to invite Joyce Ajluni from the American Friends Service Committee. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Abhi, for the invite. And thank you for coming to my neighborhood. I think I live very close to here. And so it was, it's lovely to make the connection and to know that I am welcome here. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Joyce Ajluni. I'm a Palestinian American. I was born in Jerusalem. I was raised in Ramallah. I spent most of my life in my dear Palestine. I'm a Quaker. Very few people don't really realize that there are such a thing as Palestinian Quakers. And I'm actually a third-generation Quaker, believe it or not. My grandmother was convinced of Quakerism, and hence here I am. Quakers believe that there is that of God in everyone. And I believe that's shared by many of our religions. And to me, and Quakers also are known for their pacifism, but we're also known for our activism and for speaking truth to power and for really walking the walk. And that's what attracted me to come to this amazing organization called the American Friends Service Committee. It is according to Fox News last week, they called us a radical organization. And I'm like, great. We love that. And they called me a radical leader. I love that. That's such a badge of honor. But seriously, we are 107 years old. We have been in this business for so long and doing work all over the world to promote peace, but more so justice as well. And so I am not going to take too long, I hope, because I have so much to say. But I have to admit that I'm tired of speaking. I really am. I'm tired of speaking. How can I say no to Abhi? No way. I kind of like, what? I have no more words. Like, what words can I say that has not been said over and over and over again by so many of us for 10 months now? Words, letters, visits, protests, arrests, statements, and yes, it's true, we've seen some shifts, and I am so grateful for that. And the efforts by all of you, by being here, by your activism, by people of faith, by the activist community has been so amazing and uplifting and enormous. But still, the carnage takes place every single day. AFSC has staff in Gaza. They send us messages and sometimes pictures of the aid distributions they're doing. I can't believe they're doing aid distributions, right? Like, how can they even do that? Their messages are heart-wrenching. If we are so tired, what do we say of them? One message I got just a few days ago was, I lost count of the loved ones I lost. Another message I got from Firas, he said to me, in a moment of despair, there is no place for us on this land, he said. All that remains for us is the sea. Let us throw ourselves into it and drown. Perhaps we will find relief from this depravity. The day after, he sends me pictures of his aid distributions, and I am just astounded. We call them our miracle workers. You know, AFSC has borne witness to the countless lives shattered by violence and atrocities committed against the Palestinian people. We have been in Gaza since 1948. In fact, we were the first organization in Gaza offering humanitarian assistance to the victims of the Nakba. And then UNRWA was created. I was reading in our archives that we were asked to set up permanent shelter for Gazans in Gaza in 1949. And my predecessor then refused, and he said, nothing permanent. These people have to go back to their homes. So they have been that standing by the principles and on the right side of history has been something that we have stood by for a long time. Oftentimes, you know, we speak about the numbers, and I have committed myself to go beyond the numbers. And so today, I just want to share with you the picture of, and I'm sure some of you have seen it, Dr. Juman Arfa and her twin children, 3 days old, Qasr and Asil. And this is their husband, Muhammad Abu Qamsan, who left his wife in their apartment to go get birth certificates. He gave her what she wanted to name them, particular names, because they had this debate about naming them. And he was so happy to come home to tell her that I named them what you really wanted me to name them. And here are the birth certificates, only to find that their apartment was bombed. Dr. Juman and her 2 twins killed, massacred. And that is just one example. Over the past 10 months, we have witnessed the scarcity of our moral leadership around us. Oftentimes we say, how did the world allow this? Why is the world allowing this? Are we not human beings? What will it take for these generations to heal from the suffering? Talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm like, what's the P for? Post? I mean, like there's no such thing. They have to create another term for Palestinian suffering. I call it persistent, P, so we don't change that. But, how do we deal with the massiveness, the orphaned, the maimed, the trauma on this mass scale? And then we are, and our government, as was said before, we are contributing. This will come and haunt us as a nation. It's going to come and haunt us. And I wanted just to say that as someone who has lived through apartheid all my life, I don't know where to begin to explain that, hey guys, this did not start 10 months ago. We have lived through this every single moment. And if there is a silver lining, if I want to call it that, is that awakening of global consciousness that is now saying, we see you, we hear you. I am no longer silenced. And to me, that is the biggest hope. Seeing you all here is hope for me, for all of us as Palestinians. So I want to thank you on behalf of all Palestinians for your perseverance, for your activism, for doing what your conscience and your faith drives you to do. And I'm pleading with you not to stop until justice is done. We want to continue pushing our government for accountability. We want to continue pushing our government to ensure a ceasefire, an immediate and permanent ceasefire. When I was at the White House a couple of months ago speaking to some advisors to President Biden, they said to me, you think we can just like call them up and they'll listen to us? I'm like, yes. And so I am just astounded. Yeah. And then she told me, we want the ceasefire because we want Western media to go in to tell us what's really going on. I'm like, really, really, really? So we have a long way to go. Our job is just starting to press our government for an immediate ceasefire. You know the list. You have it. Arms embargo, humanitarian aid, but let's not forget the self-determination of the Palestinian people. That is long, long, long overdue. So I think I took a bit longer than my time, but I wanted to say that I will continue to work with you all as Quakers, as a Palestinian Americans, and in our prayers today. I can't stress enough the role that the faith community can play. You said it so well, and but in the midst of all this despair, I am hopeful. I am hopeful. And I think we have to keep the hope alive and build on all our successes, because we have had successes. And let not despair stop us from moving forward until justice is done. And you know, I just wanted to say, you know, my heart goes out to everybody. I sometimes, because of the enormity of what's going on in Gaza, I don't want people to think that I'm not thinking about, you know, the hostages that are suffering under the tunnels, but also the Palestinian prisoners. Did you read B'Tselem's report? Right? What is it called? Something, Welcome to Hell? Over 8,000 in the West Bank alone, prisoners have been kidnapped from their homes since October 7th. Kidnapped from their homes. Some of them are family members. A young girl, family member, 14 years of age. They took her at 4 o'clock in the morning. We are not bargaining chips. And that's why they are rounding us up, one by one by one, torturing them. My friends who were released from prison and detention, they come back like a twig. Over 60 in detention have lost their lives. 60. This is not heard of before, people. We never, I mean, there was also always mistreatment of Palestinians in Israeli prisons, but not at that level. But you have to understand that Ben-Gvir sanctioned it, and he said he's proud of it. You know, rape and sodomy included. He sanctioned it, and he said he's proud of it. So our job is a long one. So thank you. I want to end this with a moment of silence, if you don't mind, because, and I want to break the silence by reading a poem from Muhammad Musa, who is a Gazan poet. Please forget about us. Please forget about us. Forget our names, our freedom to exist, the bloodstains on your screens, the screams under your pillows, the echo of our hunger, our bodies buried in rubble, the blood that pools in our streets, its scent lingering. Forget whether we resemble each other or not, whether we speak the same language or not, whether our children are of similar age or not, whether we sleep and you can't, whether we dream or you do not. Simply forget about us. Whether it's better to perish in the summer of early sorrows or in the winter of delayed defeats, whether we are interred in a communal grave or abandoned for stray dogs to consume, simply forget about us. For we too have lost memory of your existence. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Joyce Ajlouni. I think I speak for everybody, we're just in awe of the work that you're doing. I heard what you said about what Fox News called you. The word radical comes from the Latin word of deeply rooted. And so when you said that, I said, you know what? The Palestinian people are deeply rooted and can't be uprooted so easily. So wear it as a badge of honor, which I think you do very well. Next, I'd like to invite Deepa Iyer, who's a South Asian activist and a writer, to come to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. And I want to thank Abhi personally for inviting me to attend. And Joyce, thank you for your really powerful testimony. So my name is Deepa Iyer, and as a civil rights activist and writer who documents and supports social change movements, I'm going to talk a little bit about the human rights imperatives in addressing what is going on in Gaza. I'm also a part of a community of parents who came together last October right here in Maryland, who have been advocating, protesting, writing letters, and pushing for ceasefire resolution. So I'm also bringing those parents here with me. In fact, that's where I want to start. My son is here, and as he and so many children across the state are preparing to start school tomorrow, let's not forget that Palestinian children in Gaza do not have that same luxury. Since the genocide began, the Israeli military has destroyed nearly 90% of school buildings and every single university in Gaza. And to add on to that heartbreak, let's not ever forget that the Israeli government has also killed 16,000 children in Gaza since last October. Just 2 days ago, the World Health Organization released the news that a 10-month-old baby in Gaza has been paralyzed by polio, the first such case in the area in 25 years. The WHO went on to say that polio does not distinguish between Israeli and Palestinian children, and that if there is not an immediate humanitarian pause, that disease will spread. So that is why, as so many have already said, and why you're here, we need to uplift our voices for an immediate ceasefire. And beyond the ceasefire, another demand that we have to lift up is the immediate arms embargo of military aid to Israel. I know everyone here is aware that what is happening in Palestine is not just an over there issue. It is also a right here issue, because the US government is sending the ammunition to Israel to continue this genocide. In fact, according to the US Campaign for Palestinian Rights, we, taxpayers right here in Maryland, are providing nearly $80 million to fund this genocide. Do you know what could be funded with that money? Maryland could hire 800 more elementary school teachers. 2,000 students in Maryland could have their loan debts canceled. And 27,000 children in our state could receive free or low-cost health care. Marylanders don't want to be funding a genocide in Palestine or anywhere in the world for that matter. So along with this call for a ceasefire and an embargo, we also have to advocate for the constitutional right to speak up about humanitarian violations. Whether we are speaking out about the safe return of Israeli hostages, or whether we are speaking out about ending the genocide in Gaza, we should expect our constitutional rights to be upheld in the same way. But as you well know, there is a disparity of treatment. In fact, right here in Maryland, several teachers have lost their jobs or been disciplined for speaking out about the genocide. Even students at River Hill High School and Long Reach High School have faced obstacles when organizing a peaceful walkout. School administrators prohibited Palestine-related signs and chants and said that using words like Gaza were anti-Israel and not inclusive. This is completely absurd. We must stand against both anti-Semitism as well as anti-Palestinian bigotry and Islamophobia. And we're living through a time where there's a lot of noise. The elections are taking up a lot of our attention. We are being pitted against each other through wedge narratives and accusations. So what do? when we are overwhelmed, when we are despairing? How do we meet this moment? One thing that I often talk about is the importance of finding a role for ourselves that maximizes our skills and our strengths. Perhaps we can be guides for young people as they are learning about colonization and occupation. Perhaps we can be gentle disruptors. Perhaps we can be caregivers for those who are Palestinian in our communities. But beyond finding a role, we must also act in solidarity. And that is where I see the most hope, the most possibility. Solidarity is the only practice that can save us. And I have seen it in so many ways, as I'm sure you have. I saw it in Ferguson in the wake of the murder of Michael Brown, where Black community members and Palestinian community members came together to say that the occupation, whether it is in Ferguson or Palestine, is wrong. I saw it just last week outside of the DNC convention when South Asian Americans, just like myself, stood together to tell Kamala Harris no to the continuation of arms to Israel and calling for a ceasefire. And I have seen it almost every single day since October 7th by Jewish community members who have been stopping freeways to the halls of Congress to make sure that they are calling for a ceasefire as well. And I see it here amongst all of us coming from different faiths and backgrounds to continue to amplify the message and to stand in solidarity with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa. I'd like to take a moment to highlight, as you all entered, you saw a little table there with some information and some photos, but I just wanted to introduce the organization. I'd like to introduce Sister Jihan, and where's Sister Amina? If you guys can stand up. The two of them, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about, thank you. I wanna tell you a little bit about these two women. Due to a chance encounter after Friday prayer here at ICCP, the two of them realized that they were both working in charity work in Gaza for Bloom Charity, as well as Hayat Washington. And they realized that they had one organization that had funds that desperately needed to reach people in Gaza, and another organization that had the capability on the ground to allow people to receive that aid. And so because of a chance encounter after the prayers here at ICCP, a beautiful synthesis happened. And as a result of that, since that collaboration between Bloom and Hayat Washington, over 500,000 meals in Gaza have been served. They've been setting up, thank you. They've set up, or they're in the process of setting up a place for people that have been orphaned as a result of the bombing in Gaza. And they have been able over the last 2 months to deliver meals, not only in the southern part of Gaza, but in central and northern areas of Gaza. And so we just really want to highlight the work that they're doing. The need is tremendous. There are a lot of organizations that are not able to get the aid to the people that are in need. Of course, we know about World Central Kitchen that Dr. Tariq is supportive of. But also, I wanted us to know that there are people within our community that are incredibly involved in the work, and they are ensuring on a personal basis that the aid does receive them. So what I'd like to invite all of you to do is to take a brief kind of interlude, and if anybody would like to make a contribution, the table is there in the entrance. And in the meanwhile, I'd like to read something from Mahmoud Darwish, who's one of my favorite authors. This is from Samt min Ajl Gaza, right? Silence on behalf of Gaza. And I'll just read it in English. What is beautiful about Gaza, and if anybody feels moved to make a contribution, please go and do so. What is beautiful about Gaza is that our voices do not reach it. Nothing distracts it. Nothing takes its fist away from the enemy's face. Not the forms of the Palestinian state we will establish, whether on the eastern side of the moon or the western side of Mars when it is explored. Gaza is devoted to rejection, hunger and rejection, thirst and rejection, displacement and rejection, torture and rejection, siege and rejection, death and rejection. Enemies might triumph over Gaza. It's amazing how he wrote this so long ago. Enemies might triumph over Gaza. The storming sea might triumph over an island. They might chop down all its trees. They might break its bones. They might implant tanks on the insides of its children and women. They might throw it into the sea, sand, or blood. But it will not repeat lies and say yes to invaders. It will continue to explode. It is neither death nor suicide. Is it Gaza's way of declaring that it deserves to live? It will continue to explode. It is neither death nor suicide. It is Gaza's way of declaring that it deserves to live. Thank you all for affirming that. And now I'd like to invite, I'm going to raise the microphone a little bit. And if you guys are dozing off, don't worry, because we have Reverend Graylin Hagler from the Fellowship of Reconciliation. I think he's going to shake us up a little bit.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Many of you hear my voice because I've been struggling with cancer and dealing with things like immunotherapy and things like that. But I'm out on the picket line as much as possible. Every single day. And in all kinds of ways. I'm still preaching, Abi. And teaching. I wear my kufiyah in the pulpit because I want my congregation to understand that we have sisters and brothers in Palestine, that we're not separate, that we're engaged in a struggle together. I come out of the black community here in the United States and know all too well Jim Crow and apartheid, what it looks like, what it feels like. I found myself as I got older, going back in time, preaching when I was a little child. One of the things came into mind. Last time I was preaching at another church. With my parents, I was born and raised in Baltimore. And we moved into a new neighborhood that was predominantly white. And my mother sent me and my brother to the store at twilight. And as we were walking, a station wagon came up behind us at full speed. My brother, who was older, screamed, "Run!" And he took off. And grown men got out of the station wagon in full Klan regalia. And they beat me unconscious. My brother came back to help me. They beat him unconscious. Ironically, as we were 15 and 16, looking at men 45, 60, ironically, the only thing that saved us that night was a cop car by accident came upon the scene and said to the men in full Klan regalia, "What's going on?" And their response was, "These niggas tried to rob us." We were put in handcuffs and locked up. And that's what saved us that night. And what I'm getting at is that experience alone helped me to understand what is going on in the West Bank and what now is going on in Gaza. Helped me to understand that there's nothing new under the sun. And when I say that, it's because the same folks who have been powering white supremacist ideology are the same folks that have been stealing land in Gaza and the West Bank. The same mentality. I also had the luxury of starting a church, a storefront church in Roxbury, Massachusetts, when I was pastoring there. And I had the luxury of walking out of my office upstairs to another office that was occupied by people from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. That was in '79. Next door to them were representatives of the African National Congress. Next door to them were organizers around the independence movement for Puerto Rico. And next door to them were organizers for Sinn Féin. Now, if you can understand, as a young man out of seminary, it gave me a unique viewpoint on the world, understanding how international oppression works. International oppression is a mirror image of domestic oppression in the United States. People come to me and they say, what about Palestinians being nonviolent? The response is, do you know how many nonviolent actions Palestinians have engaged in? The issue with nonviolence is you gotta have a population that is able to move systems that are moved by what they see and what they hear. Without them, nonviolence is a weakened exercise. And what I'm getting at is that if you don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't have an affinity towards it, it doesn't happen. It goes back to that old philosophical question. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one around, does it make a sound? We may immediately say, of course it makes a sound. That's not what the question's after. The question is raising the issue of perception. If there are no ears to hear the vibration, to hear the rustle of the leaves, the crumbling of the wood, then yes, the tree fell, but there are nobody there to tell about it. So when the march, the historical march of return from Gaza took place and people were killed for resisting, for standing up nonviolently, I didn't hear many people in this country cry out. I didn't hear many people challenge the administration. Everybody got upset in October. And yes, death of any kind is a horrendous thing. But I had to ask, where were you in 1948, 58, 68, the day before October 7th, nobody had much of a word to say. How do you get justice? You got to speak out and stand up for it, whether the time is right or whether the time is not right. You got to stand up in inconvenience and convenience. You got to stand up and speak out and challenge folks on what their eyes don't see, nor their ears hear. Because that's the issue right now. Just like you pointed out. Talk about wanting to go in and have the Western media see. Haven't you seen enough? I know I have. I don't need nobody else to try to legitimize what Palestinians are telling me what's going on in Gaza. In other words, there's a tendency in the oppressor class to never believe those who are oppressed. Folks don't believe that people are oppressed. They don't believe they're hurt in the same way. They don't believe they grieve in the same way. And they don't believe they die in the same way. That somehow the death of a Palestinian is not worth the death of an Israeli or of an American. Sisters and brothers, we got to continue to cry out. Right now, it's like, lift it up, we got an election going on. A lot of noise. I'm sure as hell not gonna vote for Donald Trump. And I told everybody in my church, if you do, we're gonna run you out of town on a rail. I guess I don't supposed to say things like that from the pulpit. I'm gonna vote for Harris. But it's not because I believe Harris is my savior. I'm more afraid of Trump than I am of her. Trump, whose son-in-law, unilaterally moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, cared nothing about what Palestinians felt or thought. But I say this, the day after Harris wins, we're going to need to kick her butt. Don't do it like we did Obama. We got him elected, then we went home thinking that we had done something. The fact is, Harris claims to hear us. Make her hear you. Shout it. Stand up. Demonstrate for it. Sit in about it. Harass them. Disrupt it until your voice is heard. Don't let them get away with anything. Because one thing that happens in the U.S., we elect somebody and we think, oh, we've done it. You ain't done jack. Let me put it that way. The military-industrial complex is still making money. The oppressors are still oppressing. The imperialists are still stealing land. So remember that unfortunately, we have a two-party system in America, unfortunately. So we got to go one way or the other, but I know as a revolutionary, I'm going to use all tools at my disposal. Vote one day, and I'm going to fight the next day. Vote one day, and I'm going to be sitting in the next day. Vote one day, and I'm going to picket your biracial butt the next day. God bless you.
See, I told you. You said you had a problem with your voice, but I heard very clearly. Okay, this takes us to our last speaker for this afternoon's program, and that's, of course, a person very beloved to all of us, Reverend Abi Janamanchi from Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam Rafai. I told you not to put me at the end, especially after Graylin. Wow. Thank you to all my friends and colleagues for your witness and really lifting up what needs to be lifted up in order for us to see more clearly. You know, I just wish I could stand before you today under different circumstances. I really do. Yet the urgency, I mean, it's beyond urgency now. You know, it's I don't know what the word is. It's beyond that. Compels us to be here today. And it is heartbreaking that 10 months ago we gathered here to call for peace, to call for a ceasefire. And 10 months later, we're gathered here still calling for a ceasefire, still calling for peace. And it is heartbreaking that over 10 months since this genocide began, we're still pleading for the world to recognize the humanity of the people of Gaza, to acknowledge their right, their fundamental right to live in peace and in dignity. And yet, here we are today, calling over and over again as the death toll rises to over 42,000 Palestinians and over 100,000 more wounded and maimed, over 16,000 children, children who should have been playing, learning, growing, are all now lost to us forever. Each name, each life taken too soon represents a world of possibilities extinguished. We think of the family, the father who went to get a birth certificate for their twins, only to return home to see that his wife, his children, his whole family killed. But you see, Gaza is not the only place where the Palestinian people are suffering. The West Bank, too, has become a battleground of oppression and violence. And in the past year alone, in the past 10 months, over 700 Palestinians have been killed, many at the hands of settler violence that has escalated to unprecedented levels that we have never seen before. And more land has been usurped, with families being driven from their homes. We just saw those pictures of a Palestinian Christian trying to defend her home that had been forcibly taken over just a couple of days ago. this is not just an assault on land, it is an assault on the very essence of what it means to be human, to have a place to call home, to live in peace and security. And we wonder how many more must die before the world sees the children of Gaza and the West Bank as human. How many families must be torn apart before we all agree that enough is enough? So this is not just a call for a ceasefire. And this is not just a call for the release of all hostages and prisoners, for urgent and unimpeded humanitarian aid to reach those in urgent, desperate need. This is a renewed call for justice, for accountability, and an ending to the ongoing erasure of Palestinian voices and lives. Because the violence we are witnessing is not new. As we heard, it is rooted in decades of oppression, of denial of human rights, and in the insidious belief that some lives matter more than others. It is a genocide and ethnic cleansing happening in plain sight, with the whole world watching, deliberating, and too often remaining silent. And we must confront this silence, for it is a complicity that history will not forgive us. The temple, the Gurudwara, the mosque, the church, the synagogue, all places of worship, all places where the divine is invoked, must rise in this moment. And the teachings of our faiths, the teachings of love, of compassion, and justice compel us to speak out over and over again. So it is once again really time for all of us as people of faith and faithful people to stand together with Gaza. And this doesn't mean somehow we are denying Israel's right to exist. It is not an either-or situation as it is sometimes forced upon us. It is a both-and commitment. We can and must advocate for the safety and dignity of all people. And we must demand more than an end to this conflict. We must demand a future where justice prevails, where those who commit war crimes are held accountable, not invited to speak before Congress. And where every child, regardless of nationality or religion, is seen as a precious, irreplaceable being. We cannot stop talking about Gaza. We cannot stop talking about the West Bank. We owe it to the courage of those who are suffering and resisting, to those who are standing up against this oppression, to continue advocating, to continue acting, to continue calling for justice. And this is a call for action beyond words. It is a call to end the flow of military aid that fuels this genocide. Words, we engage in that. That's kind of our bread and butter. They're beautiful. They're cheap. So if indeed, I was really inspired by Michelle Obama saying, do something, and Kamala Harris talking about the deep suffering of the Palestinian people. So do something. Do something to end that suffering. Stop that military aid now. I was at a meeting at the White House with some of the advisors, got a similar response. And I said, Ronald Reagan made that call. Of course, they didn't like that because I was invoking an American philosopher that they don't want to hear, Anyway, our solidarity must translate into tangible actions that challenge the structures of violence and oppression. You know, in these moments of despair, I am reminded of the words of our sacred texts that hold us, that ground us, that provide us with avenues to hold on to that resilient hope. The Bhagavad Gita, Hindu sacred text, teaches us about the duty to uphold righteousness even in the face of overwhelming adversity. It is a call to act with integrity, to stand firm in the face of injustice. So as we bring our time to a close, I offer an ancient Hindu prayer, a prayer not only for peace, but for the strength to continue this struggle, for the courage to speak truth to power, and for the wisdom to see every life as sacred. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings experience the holy. And may no one suffer in any way. Let this prayer be a reminder that our fight is not just for peace, but for a world where justice and compassion guide our actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhi. Talking about genocide is not the most happy thing to do on a Sunday afternoon. But there's a lot of beauty in this gathering. There are a lot of beautiful souls that are here today, people that care about peace, people who care about justice, people who care about what's right. And so we want to celebrate that. And so to close our program today, we'd like to invite Elise Bryant from the DC Labor Chorus to lead us in a closing song.
I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. I am my sibling's keeper. And so we can say together, when we sing together, we breathe together. And we breathe together, our hearts synchronize as one. So I'm a tenor, so it might be a little low for you sopranos. So sopranos, feel free to go up an octave above me. Go there. Altos, I used to be an alto before the cigarettes and the beer. But I think you work with this. And bass, it might be too high. Go down there where you and Barry White like to live, and we'll sing this together. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Say it again. Peace, salam, shalom. Yeah, harmony, go. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. We believe in 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 peace, salam, shalom. We will work for 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 peace, salam, shalom. in Gaza, peace. Salam, shalom, in West Bank, peace. Salam, shalom, in Sudan, peace. Salam, shalom, in Ukraine, peace. Salam, shalom. Last time. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Thank you.
May we all depart united and blessed. God bless you and your families. I think for many of you, it's the first time to meet each other, so we'd like to enjoy some fellowship. If you have a little bit of time, we'll be offering some tea and coffee in the cafe, and you're most welcome to stay along and make some new friends, reunite with old ones, and you're welcome to have something to eat or to drink before you leave. Thank you so much.